The founder of the Mongol Empire entered the world during the 12th century, most likely in 1162, though historians debate whether his birth occurred anywhere between 1155 and 1167. Born with the name Genghis Khan into the Borghesian clan, he likely drew his first breath near the Anan River's upper valley, close to Berchen-Kaldon, a sacred peak in the Khenti Mountains of northeastern Mongolia. Genghis Khan's father Yasuge commanded respect as a Mongol chieftain. The Secret History of the Mongols, a royal chronicle compiled after Genghis Khan's death, traces Yasuge's ancestry to Kabul Khan, the Borghesian clan chief from earlier in the century. Whether this genealogy represents historical truth or political propaganda remains contested among scholars, but Yasuge's reputation as a fierce warrior leader is undisputed. He fought alongside Kukula in the 1150s and forged a sworn brotherhood with Tigro, chief of the powerful Karaite tribe. Around 1160, Yasuge ignited a feud that would smolder for generations when he abducted 15-year-old Holland, who had been promised to a Merkit chieftain. Over the next decade, Holland bore Yasuge 5 children, 4 sons and a daughter, with Genghis Khan as the eldest. Yet Genghis Khan was not Yasuge's firstborn. 2 older sons from another marriage meant he held no automatic claim to succession. Young Genghis Khan mastered the essential skills of steppe warfare, horsemanship, and archery. These abilities, combined with hunting and falconry, which would become his lifelong passions, prepared him for survival on the vast Eurasian steppe stretching from Hungary to Manchuria. His closest childhood companion was Jamuga of the Jadarad clan, with whom he swore brotherhood. The political landscape of Genghis Khan's youth was complex. The Mongol tribes split into 2 major clans, the Borghesian and the Tay-Shiad. 5 dominant tribes controlled the region: the Mongols, Karaite, Merkit, Tatars, and Naimon. Powerful neighbors surrounded them. The Jin dynasty, ruled by Genghis Khan from Manchuria, controlled imperial China to the east and southeast since 1115. The Tangut ruled Western Shire occupied northwest China. Inhospitable Siberia stretched northward, and the declining Muslim powers of Central Asia and the Middle East lay to the west and southwest. Around 1171, when Genghis Khan reached approximately 9 years old, his father arranged his betrothal to Bort, daughter of Dai Sechin, an Ongarad tribal chief. The Mongol elite traditionally married Ongarad women, so Yasuge and Genghis Khan embarked on a long desert journey for the ceremony. Yasuge could only offer a single horse as payment, forcing Genghis Khan to remain with the Ongarad as a herder until a proper dowry could be arranged. Though initially ashamed, Genghis Khan spent 3 productive years learning about trade between the Ongarad and the prosperous Jin Empire. Genghis Khan's comfortable arrangement ended abruptly when he was 12. During a raid, Yasuge encountered Tatars who invited him to dinner. Bound by steppe hospitality customs, he accepted and was poised. The slow-acting Tuksin gave him time to send word for Genghis Khan's return. Dai Sechin reluctantly released the boy, understanding the family's dire situation. By the time Genghis Khan reached home, disaster had struck. Holland's attempt to claim leadership for her teenage sons had failed, and the Tay-Shiad had reasserted control among the Mongols. As followers abandoned her, Holland and her children descended into poverty, surviving only through hunting and fishing. Genghis Khan and his brother Kasa proved most skilled at procuring food, but their half-brothers Begta and Belgatai began claiming their kachas when Begta stole and consumed a large fish the younger brothers had caught. Genghis Khan and Kasa responded with deadly violence, ambushing Begta and killing him with arrows. While Belgatai did not seek revenge, Holland raged at her sons, warning that internal conflict would prevent them from confronting their true enemies. Her prophecy proved accurate. The Tasiad leader Targutai used Begta's murder as justification to capture Genghis Khan. The boy fled into the forest, surviving 6 days before hunger forced him out. Captured and restrained with a restrictive device, he eventually overpowered his guard and escaped with help from a Borghesian sympathizer. Returning to his family at 14, Genghis Khan found them reduced to owning just 9 horses. When Tay-Shiad raiders stole 8 of them, Genghis Khan pursued the thieves on the remaining horse. Along the way, he befriended a young warrior named Bourku who joined the pursuit. After recovering the horses in a nighttime raid, they escaped when Bourku wounded the lead pursuer with an arrow. Over subsequent years, Genghis Khan and Bourku assembled a loyal band of warriors. Another talented fighter, Bourku, joined them and became a trusted companion. Around 1178, When Genghis Khan reached 16, he traveled to Oranjara territory with Borku and claimed Bort as his bride from Daiset. 2 years later, humiliation struck. 300 Merkit horsemen raided Genghis Khan's camp in retaliation for his father's ancient crime. While Genghis Khan escaped with his brothers and mother, Bort was deliberately left behind to ensure his flight. Desperate to recover his wife, Genghis Khan appealed to Togrul. Invoking the Karai chief's sworn brotherhood with Yasuke, Togrul accepted Genghis Khan as an adopted son and mobilized an army against the Merkit. The campaign succeeded, and Bort was rescued, but she had been given to the Merkit chief's brother and was pregnant. When Bort delivered a son in 1182, Genghis Khan accepted the child as his own, naming him Joki. The following year, Bort bore Chagatai, Genghis Khan's biological son, who would relentlessly question Joki's legitimacy throughout their lives. By his early 20s, Genghis Khan had established himself as a formidable Mongol leader. His principal rival was Jamuga, his childhood sworn brother, who now led the Jaderet clan. Both men had fought together against the Merkit, but their alliance fractured after 2 years, as each sought to unite the Mongols under his own banner. Jamuga commanded larger forces and support from older, conservative elements, while Genghis Khan controlled most of the Borgigan and attracted talented followers from humble backgrounds, including Jelmay from the northern forest tribes and his 10-year-old brother Sabiti, who would soon prove himself as a gifted warrior. In 1186, Bort gave birth to a third son, Ogide. That same year, Genghis Khan's followers elected him Khan of the Borgigan clan. However, his ascent stalled in 1187 when Jamuga's army defeated him at Dal and Balj. The historical sources fall silent for several years afterward, suggesting Genghis Khan lost most of his supporters and entered exile. According to Subadai's biography, Genghis Khan and his remaining loyalists sought refuge in the Jin Empire during this period. Genghis Khan's absence weakened Togrul, who was subsequently overthrown and exiled from the Kurit Khanate. In 1195, opportunity arose when the Jin and Tartars clashed over spoils from a joint victory against the Onrod. Genghis Khan, allied with the Jin frontier commander, and inflicted devastating defeats on the Tartars in 1196. The resulting plunder enriched Genghis Khan and enabled him to restore his alliance with Togrul, helping return him to Kurit leadership. In 1197, Genghis Khan revived his vendetta against the Merkit. The 21-year-old Subadai infiltrated their camp, gathered intelligence, and led a swift, successful campaign. Further victories followed through the late 1190s and early 1200s against the Merkit and other steppe peoples like the Nama. These successes alarmed rival tribes, who elected Yamaga as universal Khan, a grander title than Genghis Khan held. Over 15 tribes joined this coalition, but many disaffected individuals secretly aided Genghis Khan by sharing intelligence. Forewarned of a surprise attack, Genghis Khan secured Togrul's support and won easily when a snowstorm scattered the coalition forces. Genghis Khan pursued Jamuga's Taishad allies to Koyatan on the Anan River and routed them again. However, a poised arrow struck his neck. According to Mongol tradition, his general Jelm saved his life by sucking out the venom while Genghis Khan lay unconscious. When the archer responsible was captured, Genghis Khan praised his marksmanship and recruited him as an officer. He became known as Gib, the Arrow, and would become one of the Khan's greatest commanders. Jamuga's coalition temporarily fragmented, but by 1202 he had formed a new alliance with the Namon and several defectors from Genghis Khan's ranks, including disgruntled uncles and his brother Khazar. Jamuga launched a coordinated attack, but Genghis Khan skillfully maneuvered his forces, alternating between guerrilla tactics and pitched battles. That winter, after a ceremony confirming him as Togrul's heir in the Kurit Khanate, Genghis Khan and his adoptive father defeated the Naman. Seeking to cement their alliance, Genghis Khan proposed that Joki marry Togrul's daughter. This infuriated Togrul's disinherited son Ilka, who defected to Jamuga after his father refused to abandon Genghis Khan. With Ilka's support, Jamuga forced Togrul to join the anti-Genghis Khan coalition. In 1203, Togrul's Kurit army defeated Genghis Khan, though he escaped with approximately half his force when Jamuga halted the pursuit. Borku and Ogade were initially missing and returned grievously wounded. An enraged Genghis Khan sent letters accusing his former supporters of betrayal while building a new coalition from his base near Baljuna convent. He and his senior commanders swore to fight to the bitter end. Meanwhile, the coalition lost faith in Togrul's leadership, and Kasar returned to his brother's side. That autumn, Genghis Khan launched an offensive against Togrul, defeating the Karaite. After a brutal three-day battle, when General Mukhali broke through to the enemy camp, Togrul was killed by Naman bandits while fleeing. Genghis Khan assumed Karaite leadership, announced the unification of Mongol and Karaite nations, and welcomed several of Togrul's officers. Genghis Khan's success prompted another coalition between Jamuga and the Namon. As preparation for this final confrontation, Genghis Khan reorganized his army into decimal units of tens, hundreds, and thousands, following the Jin Chinese model. He created an elite bodyguard and established administrative structures for governing pacified tribes. He developed a formula offering autonomy to peoples who submitted peacefully while threatening terrible consequences for resistant psychological warfare the Mongols would employ consistently for the next century. In 1204, Genghis Khan convened a Kurultai Grand Council to plan the Naman campaign. Persuaded to launch early, he began on May 17, 1204. By June's end, Mongol forces reached Namon territory and clashed with the enemy. Though vastly outnumbered, Genghis Khan ordered his men to light 5 fires each at night, creating the illusion of superior numbers. Deceived, the Naman commander Taiyang Khan proposed retreating to the Altai Mountains, but his subordinates insisted on offensive action. 4 months, both armies maneuvered until Taejong prepared for battle at Shukamot beneath Mount Nak. As Genghis Khan and his generals spearheaded the attack, Jamuga suddenly withdrew his forces, eliminating Taeyong's numerical advantage. Despite this, the Namon fought courageously, but Genghis Khan's initial charge caught them unprepared. The Mongols gradually encircled their enemies as they retreated up Mount Nak's slopes. Astonished when the enemy charged down in a desperate final assault, Genghis Khan offered honorable surrender terms, but the Naman chose to fight to the last man. Taejong was captured and died from his wounds shortly after. Most of his allies submitted to Genghis Khan at age 42. After enduring numerous setbacks, Genghis Khan had vanquished his enemies and united over 30 tribes across a vast portion of the Asian steppe. Though victory at Shukamot seemed decisive, Jamuga remained at large. Most of his followers had deserted and submitted to Genghis Khan, forcing him to flee into the mountains with a dwindling band. When Genghis Khan placed a substantial bounty on his head, Jamuga's last 5 companions tied him up and delivered him. Prizing loyalty above all, Genghis Khan executed the traitors but deliberated longer on his sworn brother's fate. Eventually he ordered his sadistic nephew El-Jigadei to execute Jamuga brutally by hacking him to pieces. In 1205, Genghis Khan raided the Tangut southward while Sabidi pacified new subjects by suppressing a Merkid rebellion. The following year, 1206, Genghis Khan held another Kurultai uniting all Mongol nobles to officially proclaim the new Mongol Empire. At this gathering, Genghis Khan received his new title, Genghis Khan, more accurately rendered as Chinggis Khan, usually translated as universal ruler. Recent scholarship suggests fierce ruler is more accurate. Genghis Khan accepted the imperial throne on condition that all would obey his word. As emperor, Genghis rewarded his followers. Long-standing companions Bawarku and Baroku received the highest ranks, while Jib and Subadi ranked one step below. These 4 joined a 9-man cabinet enjoying greatest privileges and participating in key decisions alongside the Khan. Having united Mongolia's tribes through conquest, Genghis faced the monumental task of eliminating tribal and clan loyalties to forge a single Mongol nation. He built a new political system demanding allegiance to the Khan and Mongol nation above kinship ties. Success depended on his ability to provide enormous wealth plundered through new conquests. This incentive system required frequent campaigns beyond the empire's borders, prompting Genghis to continue military reorganization begun during his unification campaigns. The basic organizational unit in the new decimal system was the Minkan 1,000 men, though the formidable Tumen 10,000 is better known. Since each subject was attached to a Minkan, this decimal system was intended to replace the old clan and tribal structure. While most Minkan leaders came from the old aristocracy, a significant minority had humble origins, reflecting the meritocratic ethos that had helped Genghis discover great commanders among the lower classes. Genghis strengthened his bodyguard Keshik to over 10,000 men, recruiting sons of powerful men to ensure their father's loyalty. He assigned his 4 sons senior responsibilities. Joki became master of the hunt. Chagatai enforced a new law code. Ogedei headed the nascent civil bureaucracy, and youngest son Tolui was named commander-in-chief. Despite these positions, Genghis's sons complained about lacking military authority. Apart from Tolui, their authority extended only to their own minkins to placate them. Genghis established a new empire division in 1209, distributing 45,000 men among family members and granting each son his own fief with expansion potential. Though these realms were theoretically subject to central government control, imperial princes often ignored appointed officials, and their domains eventually formed the basis of increasingly independent states under their descendants. As part of his state-building program, Genghis introduced a new law code called the Great Yasa. While much of the Yasa codified traditional steppe customs, it also attempted to establish common laws for the new Mongol nation. Part of the code consisted of military regulations concerning army mobilization, officer duties, and punishments for failure. Regarding taxation, Genghis granted generous exemptions to religious leaders and foreign merchants, though maintaining traditional pagan beliefs. His policy of religious toleration would eventually enable him and his successors to rule a vast empire of Buddhists, Muslims, Nestorian, Christians, and Confucians across Asia. He maintained good relations with Muslim merchants operating along the Silk Road westward who sought Mongol assistance accessing Chinese markets eastward. However, harsh elements existed. The Yasa mandated death penalties for numerous crimes including lying, contaminating running water, and failing to share food with strangers, though wealthy criminals could often avoid capital punishment by paying large fines. The Yasa applied only to Mongols, with little consideration for foreigners' fate. Accordingly, Mongols habitually captured foreign women during campaigns as concubines. Genghis and his sons had the first choice of female captives. He would accumulate 23 official wives and a harem exceeding 500 women. Some geneticists and historians speculate that as many as 16 million people today may descend from Genghis Khan. Between 1206 and 1209, Genghis continued modifying his military organization. Parts of the Kashig received specialist duties including intelligence gathering, surveying and map-making, and organizing army supplies. During peacetime, the annual hunt organized by jokis served as primary training for Genghis's armies. As in military campaigns, Tumans would cooperate to surround animals across large areas before gradually closing in for the kill. Anyone allowing an animal to escape or killing one before the Khan's arrival faced severe penalties. Once prepared, Genghis and his inner circle would descend upon the encircled animals before allowing officers and their men to complete the slaughter. The exercise enabled Mongol armies to practice maneuvers and communication methods while providing vast quantities of food. The Mongol cavalrymen's primary weapon was the bow and arrow. Each man carried both short-range and long-range bows with 60 arrows total, divided between short-range and long-range projectiles. The most ferocious was the relatively small composite bow requiring great upper body strength, used effectively but launching arrows with devastating speed and power. Most notably, it could be fired from horseback by skilled cavalry archers. This weapon would enable the enormous conquests to follow. Each Mongol warrior possessed at least 6 horses, enabling travel up to 65 miles daily. The speed at which Mongol armies moved was Genghis's main strategic advantage. Since his armies were often outnumbered, Genghis employed various tactics to exaggerate his force's size. One best-known Mongol tactic was the feigned retreat. If struggling against strong defensive positions, the army would withdraw and leave plunder behind. While enemies were distracted by loot, Mongols would return and cut them down in open fields. Though Mongols later employed Chinese siege engineers, they initially weren't accustomed to siege warfare. Genghis avoided attacking well-fortified cities, preferring to attack smaller towns and distribute resulting plunder evenly among his otherwise unpaid troops. After his elevation as Khan, Genghis rarely commanded military campaigns personally, preferring to send sons and senior generals. In 1207, Joshi led a successful campaign against Turkic forest peoples in southern Siberia, including the Buryat, Kyrgyz, and Oyarat. In 1208, Subidai won a crushing victory against the ever-rebellious Smerkid, though Genghis criticized him for allowing some to escape northward. In 1209, Genghis secured submission of the Uyghur kingdom in East Turkestan, now China's Xinjiang autonomous region. The Uyghurs had once ruled a mighty empire including much of Mongolia, but by the 13th century's beginning had submitted to the Karakitai, whose empire extended from modern Kazakhstan into northwest China. Genghis subsequently recruited many Uyghurs into Mongol imperial administration and adopted Uyghur script for the first official Mongol written texts. With conquest of the forest peoples and Uyghur submission, Genghis laid groundwork for invading China. Since the Tang dynasty's collapse in 907 AD, China had been divided among competing dynasties. At the 13th century's beginning, four such states existed: the Jurchen Jin Empire in the northeast, the Tangut Western Xia in the north, Karakitai in the northwest, and the Song dynasty south of the Yangtze River, though only the Song was ruled by the Han Chinese majority. All four states' rulers adhered to Chinese customs and administrative practices. The Mongolians would benefit substantially from China's divided state. Genghis viewed the Tangut Empire both as a plunder source for restless armies and a testing ground for fighting the more powerful Jin. After the initial 1205 raid, Genghis launched a larger 1207 campaign, forcing the Tangut to pay annual tribute. When payment was suspended in 1209, Genghis organized a large invasion force for a punitive expedition. Eventually, desperate Tanguts formally submitted to Genghis Khan and promised to supply troops for future campaigns. By 1211, with his rear secure, the 49-year-old Genghis Khan turned attention to the Jin Empire. This was motivated partly by desire to avenge frequent Jin raids into Mongol territory and the relentless logic of perpetual conquest to feed and pay troops. But invading northern China had been a long-held ambition. The Jin had conquered northern China from the hidden Liao dynasty at the 12th century's beginning and driven Song emperors south of the Yangtze River. Though a peace treaty was signed between Jin and Song in 1142, relations remained uneasy with occasional conflicts. At the 13th century's beginning, the Song attempted to reclaim territories north of the Yangtze while the Jin easily defeated the invasion. Within years, the Jin heartland of Manchuria faced a heathen rebellion partly encouraged by Genghis. Having been preoccupied with wars against the Song dynasty, the Jin left its northern frontier relatively undefended. As the Jin planned to strengthen northern defenses by building a new wall, Genghis decided to strike. In early 1211, Genghis called a Kurotai where he outlined plans to conquer northern China. Unlike previous steppe peoples who had intermittently conquered parts of northern China and abandoned their homeland to newcomers, Genghis intended to maintain his Mongolian power base from which he would rule an empire incorporating both nomadic Central Asian steppe cultures and sedentary Chinese cultures. The invasion force of approximately 100,000 men began moving in March. Genghis divided his army into three columns. The eastward column was commanded by Gib and Subadi. The central one was led by the Khan personally alongside Tolui and Mukali, while the western column was commanded by Genghis's three other sons. While Genghis's elder sons faced no opposition after crossing the Gobi Desert, the other two columns raided areas north of Gin, attempting to draw enemies to battle. When Gin armies refused the bait, Genghis marched forces southward. In response, the Jin formed two armies, one to face advancing Mongols frontally and another to strike Genghis's right flank. Genghis ordered Gib to march westward behind his column and eliminate the flank threat, leaving the Jin with a single army, while the Jin commander deployed forces in a narrow pass to prevent Mongols from fighting on open ground. The momentum of Mukali's charge proved overwhelming for Jin cavalry, which trampled infantry while fleeing. The Mongols won further pitched battles to destroy Jin field armies. Genghis, followed by capturing several major cities, and ordered Gib to advance to Juyong Pass, near the Jin capital of Zhongdu, modern Beijing. Unable to take the pass by direct assault, Gib feigned retreat and destroyed the garrison before the pass. He marched toward Beijing but was recalled by Genghis, who realized the Mongol army wasn't yet equipped to capture such a well-fortified city. Despite battlefield successes in 1211, once Mongols returned home for winter with plunder, the Jin reoccupied all lost cities. The following year, Gib led a raid deep into Manchuria and sacked Luoyang, encouraging a major Khitan uprising. In October 1212, Genghis joined Joki Chagatai and Ogedei to attack Detong, but the Khan was wounded by an arrow and broke off the siege. In 1213, Genghis defeated a new Jin field army before taking Juyong Pass and surrounding Beijing. Mongol successes led to Shashu, the Beijing garrison commander, to overthrow the Gin emperor and install a puppet ruler with himself as regent. In November, Hushashu managed to defeat Mongols outside Beijing but was defeated days later and killed by his deputy commander. Genghis maintained 5,000 men around Beijing and divided his army into 4 columns that ravaged the whole empire. Genghis and Tolui led the largest detachment southward and threatened the southern Jin capital of Kaifeng in 3 short months. The 4 Mongol armies rampaged through Jin territory, leaving a devastation trail by destroying all crops to starve the population into submission. While Genghis returned to Mongolia, he maintained a tight Beijing blockade and encouraged the Jin emperor to submit, though the Jin signed a 1214 peace agreement providing for ending the Beijing blockade in return for heavy payment to Mongols. The Jin emperor almost immediately fled south and established his capital at Kaifeng. Genghis resumed hostilities and appointed General Samyuka to lead the Beijing siege. Though the Mongol army also suffered extreme hunger and both besieger and besieged allegedly resorted to cannibalism, Samyuka remained methodical. 2 Jin armies sent from the south in early 1215 were defeated by Mongols. In May, Mongols launched an assault on the city, and after overcoming valiant Jin resistance, victorious Mongols sacked the city, devastating it so that the population fell by more than 3. Despite this enormous setback, the Jin government in Kaifeng refused to surrender. In 1216, Mukhali defeated a Jin counterattack eastward while Samyuka led 30,000 men southward and joined a Tangut force to devastate the countryside around Kaifeng. Genghis, hard in peace conditions following Samyuka's raid, and negotiations with the Jin broke down. When Genghis returned to Mongolia in early 1216, he left Mukhali in command in China. Mukhali received an army of 70,000 men, but most came from recently subjugated nations who could desert at the first sign of Mongol weakness. Limited manpower forced the Mongol commander to scale down operations, and in 1218 Genghis himself had to lead a pacification campaign against the Tangut, who had moved away from a pro-Mongol policy under a new ruler. By year's end, Genghis supplied Mukhali with reinforcements, increasing his army to 100,000 men. Though as brutal as his comrades, Mukhali also sought to consolidate Mongol control by acting magnanimously toward defeated foes, and he methodically subdued much of northern China. He died in 1223 with a pristine military record, having never lost a single battle. Mukhali was aided by an alliance with the Song dynasty, but following his death conflict arose between erstwhile allies, enabling the Jin to make a brief recovery. The Mongols would wait another decade to fully extinguish the Jin Empire. While Mukhali campaigned in northern China, Genghis's attention turned westward. Since the 13th century's beginning, Karakutai had been at war with Shah Muhammad II of the Khwarezmian Empire, situated east of the Caspian Sea in Central Asia. In 1208, fugitive Nayman Prince Kuokluk arrived in Karakutai and built an army under the pretext of fighting Genghis, only to overthrow his overlord and declare himself Khan in 1213. An old rival's re-emergence on his doorstep led Genghis to send an army of 20,000 men under Jib to invade Karakutai. The Muslim-majority population who had suffered under Kluk's anti-Islamic religious policy welcomed Mongols as liberators and defected in mass. After sweeping aside Kukluk's army, Jib entered the Karahitan capital, Balazagan in modern Kyrgyzstan in triumph and incorporated it into the Mongol Empire. He then followed Kukluk south into Kashgaria, where he encouraged Muslims to revolt by issuing a religious tolerance proclamation. In 1218, Jib eventually caught Kukluk in northeastern Afghanistan and executed him. Thus began Mongol westward expansion into Central Asia, even as other Genghis armies still undertook China's conquest far eastward. While Jib pursued Kukluk, Genghis sent another army northward under Joki and Subidai to pursue Merkid remnants, who had allied with the Kuman or Kipchaks, a Turkic people occupying a large expanse of Eurasian steppe from the lower Danube westward to the Atish River eastward. Mongols drove the Merkid Kuman army into Khwarezmian territory and defeated it in battle. Angered by the incursion, Shah Muhammad sent an army to meet the Mongols. Though considerably outnumbered, Mongols fought the Khwarezmians to a standstill before withdrawing. Upon hearing battle reports, Genghis was keen to maintain peaceful relations with Khwarezmia and establish a mutually beneficial trading relationship, allowing him to turn attention back to China. In early 1218, Genghis sent a large trade mission to Otrar in the Shah's empire's north, a fort in far eastern Kazakhstan today. A local governor massacred the entire contingent, claiming they were spies. Genghis initially showed restraint and sent 3 envoys led by a Muslim diplomat, asking the Shah to hand over the local governor. When an indignant Shah Muhammad executed the diplomat in response, Genghis finally took action and declared war. As both sides prepared for war, Shah Muhammad and his advisors decided they could most effectively fight Mongols by retreating into cities and forcing costly sieges, which Mongols were still uncomfortable engaging in, preferring open field battles. Meanwhile, Genghis received a steady information stream about the Khwarezmian Empire through Muslim merchant networks. He knew the empire was ridden with divisions, and that the Shah had struggled to establish centralized control from his Samarkand base. Furthermore, the Shah's mother, Turkan Khatun, was a powerful political figure who could issue decrees in her own name. These dynamics played perfectly into Genghis's hands, allowing him to sow disinformation among Khwarezmian officials by issuing false decrees from Turkan Khatun. Though the Khwarezmian Empire's terrain posed considerable challenges for any invasion force, Genghis was confident in his army's ability to achieve victory. A Mongol army of 30,000 horsemen under Jiben Joki made the first move, heading west from Karakatai and entering the fertile Fergana Valley in spring 1219, after crossing high passes between the Pamir Mountains and the Tian Shan. Meanwhile, Genghis's main army, accompanied by his three youngest sons and Subiti, the campaign's strategic mastermind, would strike at Otra. Though Khwarezmians had intended to pursue a defensive strategy, Mongol appearance in Fergana provoked Shah Muhammad into sending a large army against them. Since Jiben Joki's army was intended as a diversionary force, Jiben advised retreat. But headstrong Joki disobeyed his father's instructions not to engage in pitched battle. Like their previous encounter, the battle proved indecisive, but Mongols managed to inflict heavy casualties before withdrawing. By this point, Genghis's main army's vanguard had appeared northward and was advancing on Otra. By October 1219, Genghis's force of 100,000 men, including allied contingents, arrived at Otra on the Siadarya River's banks. While Genghis attempted to lay a trap by sending a small force up the Siadarya towards Samarkand, Central Asia's greatest city at that time, the Shah counted on a strong 60,000-man garrison at Twa to hold against Mongols. Once Genghis realized the Shah wouldn't take the bait, he ordered his sons to besiege Otra with full force. With several years' experience besieging Chinese cities now behind them, Mongols were far more proficient at siege warfare than Khwarezmians had anticipated, and Otra fell quickly in February 1220. Meanwhile, Joki marched north to capture cities along the Siadarya, while Jib turned south to close off any Samarkand escape route. Genghis and Tolui took 40,000 men and marched southwest across the Kuzakun Desert, arriving at the oasis city of Bushar in February 1220. The bewildered Shah Muhammad was now surrounded by Mongol armies on all sides.